This will be a hard lockdown similar to, in fact identical to what we did a couple of weeks ago.
From midnight tonight, all of Victoria is in a 5-day lockdown.
You only get one chance to go hard and go fast. If you wait, if you hesitate, if you doubt, then you will always be looking back wishing you had done more earlier.
There are now 18 cases in Victoria, 11 reported yesterday.
I am not prepared to avoid a 5-day lockdown now only to find ourselves in a 5-week or a 5-month lockdown.
Amongst the most concerning, the growing case numbers from last Saturday's AFL match at the MCG.
We've got an AFL football game where it appears people who did not knowingly spend any time together and don't know each other have infected each other.
Meanwhile, in Sydney, where Victoria's transmission originally came from,
New South Wales recorded 65 cases of community transmission. Now, obviously, that's a welcome drop on yesterday's numbers.
But there's one number that's not dropping.
28 of those cases were infectious in the community.
And 7 more in isolation for only part of their infectious period.
I am predicting we will have higher case numbers tomorrow.
With pressure mounting on the Premier.
You've locked us down for 3 weeks. You're now locking us down for another 2 weeks. And you keep saying the settings are right. When are you going to acknowledge it's time to lock it down harder to get rid of this thing?
The people of New South Wales know that our government has access to the best health experts in our nation.
With respect, the best health advice has just got us a 5-week lockdown.
New South Wales now has 73 cases in hospital, 19 in ICU, 5 are on a ventilator.
In the intensive care unit, 1 is in their 20s, 1 is in their 30s, 2 are in their 40s. This reinforces that COVID is a serious condition.
Tonight, Australia's 2 biggest states and 2 biggest cities will be in lockdown as Australia is again on a COVID knife edge.
Nothing about this virus is fair. Nothing about the fact that this virus has travelled from Sydney is fair. That's just the reality we face.
Pointed? Don't know. Professor Nancy Baxter joins us now. Nancy, let's start with Victoria, which has made that really quick call to go into a lockdown. Do you think it's the right call?
Well, I think that they were likely waiting for a day or two, but what's really tipped them over are the transmissions at the football game with people who were sitting in the vicinity of each other but didn't know each other, didn't have an encounter with each other, and ended up getting COVID. This is generally what we think of as a low-risk situation because, it's outdoors, so there's lots of ventilation. So it's really concerning that there was a transmission of Delta in this setting. And when you think about it, there could be literally thousands of people that might have become positive with that exposure. It could be a super spreading event, and there'd be a lot of people out in the community potentially spreading COVID with multiple lines of transmission. So I don't think they really had much of a choice once those people in the football game turned positive.
And Nancy, a year ago today, pretty much, Melbourne was heading towards 700 daily cases. Is our current situation, when you take in what's going on in New South Wales, in Victoria, what we've seen in Queensland and the Northern Territory, South Australia recently, our current situation nationally, are we better or worse off than a year ago?
Well, it's a great question. And in some ways, we're much better off. We know a lot more about COVID. We know how it transmits. We know it's airborne. We have much better contact tracing. Even the contact tracing in New South Wales, which was very good, we've all upped our game. So in many ways, we're better off. And the numbers, although they're not good, they're not the 700 type of number we had in Melbourne, even though we were in tight lockdown then. But, now we have this kind of game changer variant, the Delta variant, which is more contagious, but more important than how contagious it is how quickly people become positive. So in the past, we had 3 to 5 days on average, when people went from being exposed to COVID to getting COVID themselves. So it gave us some time, not a lot of time, but some time for the contact tracers to find them, put these people in isolation before they became positive and a risk to their community. But now that's down to 1 day. So they have to find the positive case, find their contacts, get them into isolation, all in kind of less than 1 day. So that's a tall order.
And meantime, Nancy, in New South Wales, the number of people in the community, while infectious, remains stubbornly high. Those numbers just aren't moving. What's the answer to that?
Well, it does take a while for lockdown to take effect. So I'm really hopeful that that the cases have peaked and they're going to start coming down. But of course, the concern is that number of 28. So that's the number of people that were in the community when they were contagious. And Gladys Berejiklian was kind of giving us a little bit of a warning that the cases were going to go up. Likely that was based on some information that she had about the cases that had happened overnight. So they may well go up from 60. Some, and people are calling for a harder lockdown. It's been 3 weeks and they're still not on top of it. So I think it's well worth thinking about going into a harder lockdown, because what's going to happen is even if the cases start to come down, it's going to take a lot longer for them to come down if there's not a harder lockdown. So, maybe a lockdown light, but you're going to be in lockdown longer, versus a harder lockdown, you get out of it sooner.
Nancy, thank you so much for your expertise. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.